Everybody is talking about Heather
Mills is in the studio.
One terrible moment transformed Heather's life.
But fortunately for the thousands of people around the world who've been afflicted by mines and lost limbs, she's put that dogged determination towards helping them.
Heather Mills has discarded her artificial left leg.
Who continuously plays a key role campaigning for the welfare of animals.
She's made it her mission to make us all go vegan. She's launching a campaign to help reduce global warming by giving up meat.
Heather keeps busy with her work as an activist, philanthropist, author, and entrepreneur.
Heather Mills is a successful businesswoman and philanthropist and has been a passionate vegan for over 20 years.
Climate change problems are absolutely from the consumption of meat and dairy because of the deforestation, because of all the water used, and because of all the methane created. So if you are not vegan, then you cannot have a big voice about climate change.
2009 was the year she created vegan food company Vbites, which is one of the biggest of its kind in Europe.
I missed going out and having a pizza with a friend or having a burger. So I said, how can I stay vegan but still be involved in society and restaurants and things?
Started to make vegan burgers, vegan fish, vegan chorizo, everything.
I haven't tried vegan food before, and that was delicious.
Sorted the taste, the product, everything. All we need to do now is raise awareness. There are people out there, millions of them, that want to eat this food.
He brings new information, I think, to me and to my department about the interest of Heather Mills in acquiring this site for one of those exciting new businesses of the future, providing vegan food.
She's got 2 factories here in the northeast, the latest on the site of that old Walker's Crisp factory in Peachley.
On my travels, I saw a lot of small plant-based companies really struggle to get any scale. So I decided to create Vbites Ventures and invest in these startups and put these startups into a manufacturing, selling and distribution team that can go out to 24 countries as Vbites does. And I then bought the ex-Coty Procter & Gamble factory. It's very innovative. We work in the algal oil sector, the vegan beauty makeup sector, and any area that requires plant-based facilities.
You affect not only the environment, but your health, the mental side of things, the prevention of diseases, the input to society because you're not sick, and the domino effect will ricochet throughout the world. It's what does that mean? And it is a waterfall of good, because I know that the vegan business is going to be the future forever. It's not just a trend, it's not just a phase, it is exactly what we need for health, what we need to do. Even if we don't care about ourselves, we have our children, and it's important we feed them the best, the cleanest, the healthiest food.
And I want to make the Northeast the plant-based valley of the world.
So I just thank Heather Mills for the person she is and the work that she does for all of us. God bless you, Heather.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'm delighted to welcome to the stage Heather Mills.
Let's keep that straight, because that looks like a headline. We're not going to talk about that, but we're going to talk about your filming as a vegan and as sorry. And as a plant-based advocate, lobbyist, and entrepreneur.
I just wanted to start by reflecting on more of that. Literally the start, Jenny, when did you find a vegan?
So I was your typical Northeast Geordie, meat and 2-veg, and working in the war in the former Yugoslavia, which is obviously not typical. But came back to England and lost my leg crossing the street. Police motorcycle chopped it off. I then was in hospital for 5 months, crushed pelvis, country flow, and split head. And my leg wouldn't heal, so they kept chopping it off more and more. So my girlfriend ran in and said, "You got to go vegan." And I was 25, so that was over 30 years ago. And I was like, vegan, schmegan, what is that? And she said she cured herself of breast cancer, which I thought couldn't be possible. But I was willing to try anything because I wanted to keep my knee. So she flew me over to Florida, to Hippocrates, and I went on a raw vegan diet for 2 years, which was fine in Florida, but really difficult back in cold, wet, windy England. And so I started developing all the products so that I could eat what I loved, which were burgers and fish and cheese, but without harming myself. So it was, I did save my day, you know, and I developed prosthetic limbs for running, for skiing, for all sorts of things so that I could continue to be active. So it literally healed me in 2 weeks. After 5 months, nothing they gave me in the hospital were not antibiotics, nothing. So my, whole system just cured itself.
Wow, I was good.
And I met thousands of others that cured, and since then millions now.
Yeah. And what was the plant-based scene like in those very early days?
We were just
developing stuff, but I think not surely can you be late stopped.
It happened pretty quickly. In those days, and I started developing in 93.
What?
That's when I first started. So 93, I lost my leg, and literally at the end of 93, I was fed up just literally having families thinking I lived off rabbit food. So that's when I started to develop it, and the development took over 2 years. And I just started to replicate things because I'd always had to chuck everything together when I was a child. My mum left when I was 9, so we had to just do fringe pie all the time. So I was always experimenting with things. So it started really early.
Well, because my first awareness of Hughes kudos was in your the shop.
That was 2008. That was way later.
Yeah, exactly. So
in 1993, I became vegan, and then there's a clip on which they showed actually last week on Lorraine Kelly of me showing them about veganism, wheatgrass juice. Dr. Hillary saying, "Oh no, this time," he said, "Yes, she was absolutely right." 30 years later, so that's when it all started. But I was raw vegan for 2 years, and then started to make the products so that they were really good. And then I acquired a factory in Corby that had made some products. But in those early days, back to your question, there was hardly anything around. But we created the pea protein burger in 1996, but it was £6 a kilo, whereas soy, being subsidized, was £2 a kilo. And the supermarkets wouldn't pay for pea protein. So what eventually became the Beyond Meat burger and pea protein, we'd already done that initially in the 90s, but it was too expensive. It's like I did the first vegan boiled egg in 1998, but the cost was too high to compare with subsidized antibiotic-filled normal eggs. So only now are people starting to pay, the price, understanding the health and the environment. So now we're moving to fried eggs, vegan, protein powder, pumpkin-based, clean labels. So initially it was, how do we get as many people off fast food? Because, they've done a good job of creating addictions with fast foods for people. And the only way to do that was stage 1. And stage 1 was meat, fish and dairy replacements. Once you've got past stage 1, and we've done this with millions of people over 30 years, your body stops wanting those meat, fish and dairy products because you're weaning yourself off it. And then you start wanting cleaner foods, But when they have this pushback about processed foods, meat and dairy is one of the most heavily processed things ever. But they're confusing the consumer, talking about vegan burgers not being healthy. They're a million times healthier than meat and dairy, but they're not a million times healthier than quinoa, kale, carrot, which is why we developed this stage 3 for the people that are ready, because I had to go straight to stage 3 with my infection. People who've never suffered illness don't appreciate their health until something goes wrong, generally. And then you have to get them to think about the animals or the environment and go to stage 1. So there has to always be a stage 1, stage 2, and stage 3 range of foods to move people across the bridge and get them off dairy being a massive opiate and take ages. That's always why vegetarians can't go vegan because they haven't found their ideal cheese.
Yes, right. I'm going to keep going.
Yeah, go.
Nursing your career. So I'm aware that you closed the shop in Irving in 2009.
Yeah.
And it was taken over by Fatboy Slim afterwards.
No, what happened was, Fatboy Slim was my neighbour, Norman, we call him. And with the demand for vegan that we created became so strong, and that store, that one on the beach, was only allowed to be opened in the summer. So we moved it into East Street and held it there for 5-6 years, and decided to focus more on manufacturing because it was a non-profit. So basically, anything that was made profit went back into the business to keep feeding people inexpensive, price-competitive food to meat and dairy, and it was used as a marketing tool to see what the public liked and didn't like. So we had tens of thousands of customers letting us know that they loved certain products and didn't like others. So that's why that was set up. And
like a test kitchen.
It was a test kitchen because in those days you didn't have vegan restaurants and you had very few vegan options. So once I saw the market change, I said, vegan restaurants, it's not worth doing now. We need to focus on manufacturing because everyone's going to give a vegan option. So we would get our vegan cheese. We make the vegan cheese for Domino's pizzas. I created the first McDonald's vegan burger, the first Burger King vegan burger back in 2003. Eventually they moved into that market. So we're trying to get vegan options available everywhere. There will be a niche market for vegan-only restaurants in the future, but it's a very high-risk business to go into. So I wouldn't recommend opening vegan restaurants. I would focus on doing great foods and getting them into different restaurants. So you've got all those options.
A lot of these vegan-only restaurants are closed.
Yeah, well, I mean, bad luck went on top of it. There was, we luckily sold ours before COVID. But sadly, a lot of people had just started to do what we'd done for years and open them, and they had the COVID nightmares. All restaurants did. So the best thing is just to get more vegan options into restaurants. And for people who absolutely will not touch anything that's made in a kitchen, the cross-contamination, which they're much better about now because of allergens to lactose, then there will be a tiny niche market, but it won't be profitable. It's really, really hard to make vegan restaurants profitable.
Wow. So, in terms of manufacturing, you started with a 4 big buns. That was in 2008.
30,000 square feet.
And then in 2018, you bought a 180,000 square foot factory down the
Hickley Walker's Crisp Factory, yeah.
Then in 2019, you bought an enormous site in the class. So you buy a
Yes, the Cody factory. So just quickly to cover that. So had the Corby factory that turned over 5 million, 17% EBITDA for years and years and years. And that's the most you could pump out of it. And then I saw that the work that we'd done, and I say we as a team, to the people that have been pushing plant-based messaging for all three areas, environmental, animal and food, saw the corn sale, which was 330 million to Exponent, and then 7 million capital injection, and then they sold up for 550 million to Mondinissa and the Philippines. When I saw that happen, I said, okay, now is the time that you're going to go like this. And then our old recipe, which went over to America, then went and became the Beyond Meat recipe. And they did the 12 billion IPO. Unfortunately, they didn't listen because the biggest weakness in the vegan sector is everybody's segmented, especially in America. And they all think they've got this amazing IP that, nobody must know about. So it's like Gollum from the Ring. And actually, because they do that, they start in a kitchen, protect it, which in the olden days, back in the 90s, you had to because nobody knew how to do things, but not now. The only way, I've only seen one innovative thing that we can't do in 30 years. We've done them all with every protein isolate of everything. And the reason they're not always on the market is price point and so and so and so. So what needs to happen is I said, okay, we're either going to have to sell out or be overtaken by the big corporates. The positives are the market's going to go like this. The negatives are they're going to put out crap, and then the consumer's going to eat it and go, this tastes like cardboard, I'm done. And they're going to move all our hard work backwards. And the second problem is they're not going to understand scaling. So they're going to work from a kitchen and then move it to somewhere else. They're going to do a brilliant job like Beyond Meat did, and all smoke and mirrors and marketing and brilliant, but they're not going to understand 100% supply chain. So if you don't have that, you're screwed. And that's kind of what happened. And the whole share overpricing of it went up, and then it started to dive. And of course, the meat and dairy journalists jumped on that, and it literally backfired massively. And that's why we've got this huge push fund. The fixing point, if everybody going in the vegan sector actually listened, because it's turned out to be absolutely true, is that you have to put all vegan products under one enormous, or two as it scales, manufacturing site, because that means you get the best procurement. So we can get, ingredients for half the price of what a small company can get it for. So we can help them by manufacturing for them, compete in the market. Vbites are 85% private label we manufacture. People think, oh, we're just a brand, but we were exclusive to Holland and Barrett for years. So when I saw that happen, back to your question, I started buying up all the factories to be prepared for this trajectory, thinking that people would be able to keep up with common sense and actually go, yes, we need to go under one roof. But they didn't. They went for 5 pence cheaper production in Europe. And I said, look, the Brexit is like having a divorce with no paperwork. It's going to be a disaster for years because this government haven't got a clue what they're doing. So look at everything from a macro. And when I saw COVID happening, I immediately ordered 5 extra machines, over-ordered on procurement because it's ambient, stored it all, sits on the asset list. We're covered for when this COVID nightmare happened. So we managed to carry on 100% supply chain because we scaled into factories. Now, the weakest bit that happened was that I took on investment, something I'd never done in my life. I ran my businesses successfully. I have 8 of them in vegan makeup and algal oil and all sorts of things. And I took on investment from a corporate that I thought knew what they were doing because they were a 9 billion food company. And unfortunately, they didn't have a clue. And they just overspent on everything and basically hired rubbish management. And that was part of the contract. They wanted me to be doing the outside stuff and then running the factory. So I set up all the bigger factories, and then they kind of ruined that. And then I bought it back again and fixed it, and it's all fixed already. It's really simple, but they just sit going, And one of the biggest bits of advice I'd like to say to anyone running a business is look at your costs over and over and over again. Everyone's so focused on sales, and then you're just chucking money down the drain here. When I went back to run the business, I renegotiated the utility contracts 40% less, renegotiated procurement 25 to 35% less, renegotiated utilities, insurance, everything, and just wiped 1.5 million of waste straight off there. Now, if they'd done that, the company wouldn't have got into any trouble. But unfortunately, they would just go, yes, dear, you go out there and talk about what you know about. We'll run the business. So be very, 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 very careful what investment you take and the terms on what role those people are going to play. Because there were too many people sitting behind ticking boxes and then move. Like, I'll never hire a salesperson again that moves every year because they're just hiding. Because if they're any good, they stay where they are for at least 5 to 7 years. So I've learned a lot from my mistakes and my naivety that everyone's just 20-hour-a-day worker like me. So
on this point, though, you think about some of the things that happened when you bought the AI for an investment. But the fact is that after a Q3 in on Lexi making a movement and being plant-based, we didn't go with it. COVID itself is very good plant-based. When else is to say. And then there was a sort of collection. And he talked about your meat and what, let's say, Meat is Farm, it's several other brands here. Preferences to some degree or up. So they just one of the faults in our It's also the fact that the category itself has underlying major time, major correction. In fact, in that area, you have another business last year from to be because of the demonstration, and then others picked up. Uber's farm was picked up by a big company. So there was a big consolidation going.
But it was also connected to this same issue, and the same issue was you go from this size company, you take investment, you take on outside management that don't understand a very specialist sector, because Plant and Bean had the same issue. I said, let's not move into any of my big factories. My factories are my property company. They're totally separate. So I look at the business, what's the best for the business. And we had another factory in Benton where we were providing Morrison's with all their vegan cheese 5 years ago. And we could still have sweated out another 35 tons from that. And once you get to that end, then you move into the big factory, or at least you have it ready, but you don't switch on the overheads. And they did switch on the overheads, and they operated from a small area. And Plant and Bean did the same. They moved from a small factory into a giant factory. And what they should have done is kept 80% of the factory shut and just operated from 20% of it and keep adding on white walling and scaling. So it very much comes back to the fact that it's the transitional period of going from a small factory to a big factory. The market is still growing when you analyze it. When Tesco's looked at the whole market of consumers, the cost of living, they said, has had no difference on people buying brands in their supermarkets at all, which really surprised me. Dominic Murray at Tesco's told me that. And we've still got all our online customers. We started the first online direct from factory to consumer in the 90s. So there is no choice but for plant-based to go up, because there will be no planet and everyone's going to get sicker. Britain and America are becoming the sickest nations in the world. So we have to get healthier. And the meat and dairy industry need to grab a piece of the vegan pie if they're going to stay ahead. Now, I predicted 5 years ago that subsidies would start to be removed from Europe. They have. Norway's removed. So when I saw that, I went after Applewood, who are owned by Northland, who are owned by Teeny, the big dairy company. And we created the first vegan cheese for them, which was the Applewood Smoky Paprika. Sadly, they got greedy and took the business over to Europe for 5 pence cheaper. And now they've had 2,000 complaints that the cheese is not as good as it was. So these big corporates think they know how to make products and think they know how to work in the vegan sector. But if you look at the big ones, they're all failing. You know, the Heinz, the Clean Celestials, apart from Upfield and Saputo are doing quite well at Butte in the plant-based sector. So there is a huge movement, and dairy-free is growing 10%. Lactose intolerance, let's put aside if you're vegan or not. 90% of people are lactose sensitive, intolerant, or allergic to dairy. They just don't know it, and they've got all of these issues. And I'm talking to people, everyone's got a cold. I haven't had a cold since I was 7. So dairy is the number one reason why you get mucus forming in your system and creating inflammation. It's just scientific fact that the scientists of the World Health Organization now fact completely. And it's a carcinogen. So we can't keep ignoring it. I know we love to eat it, but we have to start thinking, how much longer do we want to live? And if there's no planet, we're not going to have anything to live on.
Yeah. So, as I said, with Don being W20B, you waiting to administration at the back end of last year. While the business is out, on the administration, beast against some other bids, what the things are, that's what they did in the skill, and what have you done since to right side?
Well, just to get the record straight on the business, so I wasn't on the board because I talked too much, and they thought they knew what they were doing. And they voted to go in administration on a Friday, 2 weeks before Christmas. And I said, and in our contract it said you have to give 3 months notice for either shareholder to provide funds. So I was in America with customers, and I found out on the Friday, and of course it was the end of the day at LA, and I'd got to speak to them on the Monday, and they'd gone into administration by the Tuesday. And I said, why have you done that? We've got no debt. We have 15 million of unencumbered assets in machinery, which could have been, asset finance. What is going on here? Why are you doing this? And they said, oh, we've got a bill for 952,000 from the energy companies. I said, yeah, that's totally rubbish. I'll sort that out when I'm back. So I don't know whether it was a hostile takeover. I can't prove that. But what they were surprised about is I put 15 million into the business, and I've never took a penny out of any of my vegan companies. It's just to try and help the animals and the planet. I make my money from my properties. But I said, well, we'll talk about it when I get back on the Tuesday. But they'd already gone into administration. And then I found out that the people who invested in it tried to buy it out of the administration. I was like, hang on a second. Why would you put it in administration and buy it out the very next day? And then the ex-managing director also tried to buy it. So they'd agreed with each other, we'll take the cheese to Germany and you can have the meat-free side of it. So all this crap was going on behind the scenes. So then I went, right, screw you, and I bought it back. And I bought it back within 48 hours. The good thing about being an individual founder, an entrepreneur, an investor, is you can move quickly. And that's really, really key. Whereas corporates have to do so much due diligence. And it's how I bought the plant and bean factory, because I wanted to help out the guy, James Hurst, get his business back. But then I found out he was a nightmare. Another long story. And he just disappeared for 6 months. I went, well, do you want this factory back or not? And he just didn't even come back. So lots of lessons for me over trusting, but really, really glad that we've got Vbites back. And basically, we've got all the key teams in place that have been with me for 10, 20, and 30 years. And we've brought out all the stage 2 Vbites products, vegan egg, poached egg, with Glavio at sinless egg, and these new products here, no bloat. Because I had to live off liquids foods, these new range of products create no inflammation in the gut, and they naturally lose weight because you're not inflamed, and they're nutritionally and perfectly complete. But they're all made with, some with mycoprotein, but without the bits that everybody seems to put in mycoprotein that inflames the gut. Quinoa, kale, carrots, that kind of thing. So that's for the stage 2 and stage 3 evolved data. They taste yummy anyway, but
let's I think it can take stock, because I can explain. I talk about understand about in products now that you've bought the business better. But what you talking about? You talk about stage 2 and stage 3 and the I'm just trying to take stock of what products to what brands, what ranges. Give me the sense of sort of the architecture of the business today. It sounds from over there.
Yeah. BB231.
And there's a few here that we're talking about, but let me just try and get you to explain. I just involved in the structure to a taxonomy way. What is the proposition of Vbites today? Where are you playing? Where are you not playing?
Okay, right. So our big thing is 85% private label. So making the vegan cheese for Domino's, making vegan duck to go in Asda's spring rolls, making our vegan chicken to go into Plantaneer sandwiches, or that's our big business. So that's our cash cow, and that's 85% of our revenue. So if somebody needs a vegan product, we have 340 SKUs. We regularly make only 30, because I've minimized the SKUs down to the best sellers only, because the previous management, you were making a profit from 20% of the SKUs, and 80% were just a waste of time. So that's the cash cow. So private label. And we were exclusive to Holland & Barrett for 27 years. So we never promoted Vbites apart from our online store in Holland & Barrett. And then they closed the fridges and freezers down, which I said was a big mistake. So they eventually brought them back after 3 years, which they're sorting out now. And, but knowing that if you need to convert someone to a healthier diet, when I say stage 1, stage 2, stage 3, I mean in the products. So our best sellers are still our best sellers, which is our vegan bacon that we made for the last 27 years, vegan chicken, vegan burgers, all that. So they're still best sellers. And they're for people who want to have a vegan gammon roast once a week, or whatever the product might be. The stage 2 is all about the involvement for your health. So it's what you call a cleaner label. So it's got more vegetables in it than a vegan full burger. And it's what we made in the 90s, which is now resurrected itself and improved because people are starting to want to have more vegetables, and the supermarkets are who evolved through the first stage. So like Whole Foods, when we put things into there 25 years ago, they wanted meat tasting vegan burgers. Now they want quinoa burgers and kale burgers and all that stuff. So that's stage 2. And then stage 3, which sits under Vbites, but as a sub-brand, is No Bloat. And No Bloat is freeze-dried vegetable from brown to freeze-dried, high nutrition, 7-year shelf life, no additives. You add hot water. So, and I developed those because of my issues I had with Lyme's disease. So
where did you get Lyme's disease?
Well, apparently I contracted it in 1996, but it sits in the cell. So a lot of people have it and you don't know. And then when I went through all the nightmare with divorce and media, I got really, really ill, and it comes out the cell, and that's when they discovered it, because the British only check the blood and you have to check the urine because it sits in the cell, and that's the only way to be able to find it. So lots of people had Lyme's disease from dogs, cats, deers, ticks, but I got it in Cambodia, and then it basically destroyed my appendix and gallbladder, and I got rushed to hospital and they were pulled out, and that's when I had to live on liquid foods for 3 years, and finally found out that I was intolerant to fructans, and that's when I started developing ideal food for anyone with gut health and aiming it at gut health and weight loss for people. Because when you've got really bad gut health, it's so painful for some people. And then this is the kind of food that needs to go in the NHS so the nurses aren't clearing up everybody's diarrhea every day. And we'd save 150 million off the NHS budget by just making people eat the right thing when they're in hospital, because it's the only time you can control someone's diet is when they're in hospital. And we don't. My best friend's dad had open heart surgery. And what did they give him when he came out? Steak and chips and ice cream and jelly. What is this country doing? I mean, it's insanity. It's insanity. You'd never get that in Austria.
And I think very well. But we can roll the top evening these. Well, good. So some of these other brands we got about Cheeman, Vegetarian, Cheesney.
They're sub brands, so they're still there. So Vbites is like the main brand, and then Making Waves is the vegan fish. I don't know if they handed out some vegan fish to you, but that was the bestseller in Green King pubs for 12 years before COVID happened. That's made from konjac, which is a Japanese mountainous vegetable. Then we have Cheatin Deli is basically all the slices. So gammon, turkey, beef, chicken, every kind of slice you would ever require, pepperoni. And then Cheesley is the brand of all our cheeses. So they're all still there. So we do meat-free, fish-free, dairy-free in all sectors and all different developments. So microprotein, we've just developed a roast, slices, and everything in that area as well. And it, again, there's idealism and realism, because we'll get a supermarket saying we want a long shelf life, clean, in a biodegradable package with bells and whistles on it. And you give it to them and go, oh, it only lasts 3 days and it tastes like shit. So, oh, what we're going to do now? So you literally have to give them all options, so they understand. And also price points, that all of these different ingredients cost different amounts, and it can't be always left to the manufacturer to have to make the 5% margin, you know. So I've really ruled out low margins with the whole teams. They were just creating turnover. And I'm like, no, this business is about profit for it to be able to continue through this Gartner effect of what's going on in the industry at the moment, while we educate people and help the public stop being confused about eating plant-based products.
And I'm not. I'll see questions to the audience. I'm on these we've been saying no up. Like, so you have a question for Heather?
No questions? I'm not going to buy anyone's head off, don't worry. Yeah?
Hi. I just wonder where you stand on the actually have my ring labeling every onto your process. forms another way that's the car-based foods. You see that as a real issue?
Yeah, I mean, it absolutely is. And where it came from was the fear from the meat and dairy industry. So the positive side of it is we've got to push back on this, because only when corn and Beerlife and Beyond Meat made a load of money did that pushback happen. While we had our vegan company for 30 years, they had nothing to say about it. So it's a good thing, because you know that they're afraid. You have very certain areas, like the Telegraph magazine is very pro-meat and animal farming. You know, we had a nightmare woman that we allowed in the factory who said she wanted to raise awareness for veganism, and she was just an undercover spy to promote her meat cooking book. So you need to look at the science yourself, and you need to look at what scientists say, and basically have proven that eating meat, fish, and dairy-free products is 1 billion times better than eating meat and dairy. End of. And if you look between the lines, they always end up saying, you know, that these products are processed. Meat and dairy is processed. So what are you comparing with? You know, it's all processed. But there are some products, like we're mainly in a green traffic label when it comes to fats and sugars and things like that. There are some beginners who put too much salt in for the shelf life, but we know how to reduce that with the packaging that we've developed. So it's understandable they're being demanded for shelf life by the supermarkets. Scandinavians love loads of salt in there, because they're not stupid like us English, who go, I'll buy the low salt, and then pick up the salt cellar and pour half a can of salt on it. Doesn't taste very good, you know. So yes, they're afraid, so that's a good thing. It's bad because the consumer is so confused with the messaging. So I can just tell you now, having studied health forever, that the best thing you can ever eat: quinoa, kale, edamame, tofus, all your fresh vegetables, pulses and beans if you can digest them. And that's why we've done no bloat for people who can't. But if everybody wants to have some junk food once a week, generally, nobody's angelic. So if you're going to sit and have a burger, choose a blooming plant-based burger. There's enough good ones around. It's that simple, and they're available everywhere. So it's not something you should have every single day. But if you are eating meat and dairy and bacon sandwiches and crap every single day, then that's what you'll need to replace until you wean yourself off. So the messaging has to be that all of the plant-based groups and people who care for animals and the planet come together and repeat the same messaging. And the weakness that Beyond Meat had is, even though they made the 12 billion, they didn't plan ahead for the pushback they would have to create the messaging quick enough to reassure the consumer that actually what they were eating was still better for them than real meat and dairy. So it's about, when you're doing anything, you think about when you went against smoking. You know, smoking was popular. One day, meat and dairy are going to look to you like smoking and oil. I mean, if you look at BP, they're setting up electric stations, BP Pulse. You know, they're not in denial that oil is not good for the environment. So we need to start realizing that meat and dairy is not good for us and the environment, and it's certainly not good for the animals.
Then, with the Greek and girls?
I wanted to ask what advice you would have for food service operators when making about the plant-based foods that are on their menus.
I would basically, having had restaurants and things, it was interesting because we made an oat cheese for Glambia to go into the food service. And I said, why are you doing an oat cheese? You're the biggest providers of dairy mozzarella in the world. Why don't you do a mozzarella vegan cheese? So when you're educating the purchaser from yourselves in any arena, you just match their products on their menu if they need initiating. And then once you've opened the loophole and you're in there, then you add on variety. So all I did in the vegan cafes was no meat Mondays, Japanese Tuesdays, Thai Wednesdays, Italian Thursdays, and I replicated the top 10 selling meals in those countries' categories, and it works. So look at who your buyer and consumer is, what stage level they're at of understanding the vegan and plant-based level, and just give them like for like matching. And if you think they're really opposed to dairy-free products, remind them the huge percentage of the population are lactose intolerant, so they can offer a lactose-free pizza with some vegan cheese on it rather than nothing. And with the Vbites vegan cheese, it lasts 12 months with no additives, allergen-free, because of the way we've developed the packaging. So I would just offer like for like in food service, and make sure you only choose brilliant products, because the biggest weakness with buyers, if they're not vegan, they think, oh, that tastes all right, that's what vegans like, but I'd never eat it. Never sell anything that you wouldn't like to eat yourself or can appreciate the taste of.
Any other question?
Hi, Heather. I'm thankful that keep your eyes clean.
Yeah.
Any top tips to take you on the good things in the these categories?
Well, I invested in a company called Bo's Ice Cream, who made an amazing ice cream, and then got themselves into trouble, and I lost all that investment, and then they resurrected themselves the next day. It's kind of how I learned about the administration process, because I got screwed. But I still wish them all the best. But they did a brilliant ice cream, and they still do. But what I advise them is, because you are competing against the big boys, and they have jumped on the plant-based sector, you can do artisan ice creams. You'll only grow to a certain level. It's a bit like the artisan cheese sector. It will slowly move forward, like Tyne Cheese are doing some brilliant artisanal cheeses. We made them in the 90s, but we're after volume and scaling, vegan cheddars and, you know, your standard cheeses. But in the ice cream sector, depending on your manufacturing capabilities, whether you manufacture them yourself or use a third-party manufacturer, you're always, and I'm sure you've done this analysis, going to know that vanilla, because we're so vanilla in England, is the #1 best-selling ice cream. And the unusual ones, people have suffered on their margins call. But you do need to have a bit of variety, as you know, but your margins will always be on your standards. And if you don't make them, I don't know if you're making them with nuts, because the weakness with Bo's good. The weakness with Bo, it's very easy to make great nut cheese and vegan cheese, but it limits your market because of the allergens. And it's not just to the direct consumer. If you are in a theatre or you're on the seaside resort, they start eliminating the nut ice creams out of their selection because of the cross-contamination. So I would stick to your standard flavors. It's about branding. It's about getting, you know, kids excited to eat your ice cream. So I would definitely get into some animation about, you know, we have a sub-brand called What No Dairy. So it's like What No Dairy with the farmer and all that kind of stuff. So it's going to be about branding, where people will pay a premium price point because you are, you know, that kind of ice cream provider, I would presume. Because if you're, but I would have two things. I would have your cash cow, lowest price, churning out vegan ice cream, and then I'd have your more higher level, higher quality ones. But it is going to be a difficult market to be in, but you're going to have to come up with something branding wise that attracts people.
One more question, Johnny, when you're going to jump in? That's it.
I don't swing the things like the show, where you know, might come to something and Vbites.
So first of all, because all I've done is invest in loads of companies, when they just decided, well, one of them innocently didn't make his business work. He made it work, and then COVID happened, and it was Milkman, great guy. He was delivering glass bottles of oat milk. COVID happened, nobody would accept a delivered bottle at the door on the van. So sadly, his company went under, and that was it. He was totally innocent. And others with price points just couldn't keep it going because they were not understanding where price points need to sit. But with Bo's Ice Cream, that guy was a city guy who became vegan and was brilliant with numbers. So he just went into administration. And I said, well, don't I have any rights? Because I'd never had anything like that. And then I learned that we can just do that and set it up the next day. So when they put me into administration, I said, well, hang on, can't we buy this back? And because we had 30 companies bidding to try and buy it back, it was speed, and it was the fact that I was willing to let all of my investment go, because I had a 4.85 million director's loan sitting on the company, and then I added another million on top of it, and the ex-investors and all the other investors were either too slow because the administrator needed to move quickly, or they didn't offer enough to buy it out. It's a bit like Meatless Farm had spent 96 million and it got bought for $1 million from KFC Group. So it was speed to market. It was literally, and the fact that I was going to re-employ all the staff that wanted their jobs back. So there was a lot of box ticking. You can't manipulate an administrator. They have to do everything by the rules. But having had it done to me, then I knew more about it. So even though bad things happen, if you learn from those lessons, somewhere in the future, it will help you. It's really weird. I mean, I lost my leg and created the largest landmine clearing prosthetic charity in the world. Would that have happened if I hadn't lost my leg? At the time, I never thought that would happen. So when you're a business owner, you've just got to hang on for dear life. And you've also got to think, how much are you willing to risk? How much do you want it? Are you willing to work 20 hours a day and be absolutely knackered? Because it is really, really hard work. But if you've got the right team together, because it's all about people, and if you don't look after your ground staff, who are the foundation, your business is never, ever going to work. So, yeah, I would just make sure it doesn't go into administration. If we ever, for some reason, got into trouble again, I would just basically stop. I wouldn't allow it to ever go into any situation where it was administration.
Well, listen, we're past our time. Let's be fascinating with the effort now. I must say that it's incredible to me as also how much money and time and blood and sweat and tears you put into the plant-based view, which is this effectively, we're like a benefactor. We're like you stop working this almost like a charity, and you continue to be going with this. Despite the fact that it's setting down there are so many barriers. Just as a final thought, what is it exactly that's keeping you down and this omni-channel?
There's no choice. I'm just fully aware of what's going to happen. And if you look at my 30-year history, speaking the truth is a very difficult thing, because everyone has their own truth. But having experienced so much in my life and seeing ahead and the vision of what's going to happen and what needs to be happened, when lots of people walk around with blinkers, is the reason that I keep going, because we have no choice. I care if there's a planet for my kids, and I think people care as well, but it's how much effort do you want to make, and how much do you want to keep your head under in the sandpit? And the people who have the power are the buyers for the supermarkets. So my final thing I'd like to say is, buy British. Loads of voters voted for Brexit. I didn't, but a lot of people did. And yet they're still ordering from Europe. And I'm like, why? If the product is here and it's brilliant, why are you ordering from abroad? If we don't have it here, import is a very important thing, as is export. But why are they doing that? Look at your traceability start to finish, and think about what you're buying and what the consumer needs to have as well as like, because that's also a great weakness. And can supermarkets stop changing their buyers every 6 months? Because they just learn about the bloody sector and then they shove them in another department and they create a massive headache for the food service. So I understand they don't want them to have their favorites, and they should be checked that they are always having open days for all foods. But stop moving the bloody buyers around. I mean, it's absolute nightmare. You just educate them and then they come back and start at stage one again.
Lady Mills, thank you so much for that.
Thank you.